Hello, everybody, and I think the screen is a little bit crooked. How did that happen? Well, these things do happen, don't they? Okay, instead of farting around, I'm just gonna go for it, and if you have to look at me that way, let it be. Okay, hi everyone. If you're new to this live questions and answers with Magdalena, my name is Magdalena. I am the founder of Hormones Balance, a nutrition practice that's dedicated to helping women rebalance their hormones with food and sleep and a lot of self-love. And so welcome to today's call. What I do is every Friday at 10 o'clock Pacific and 1 o'clock Eastern, I do live questions and answers with you guys. You can ask me pretty much anything you want to know about hormones, nutrition. I tend to combine these two together more so than talking about bioidentical hormones and stuff like that, which falls more into the paradigm of medical practitioner. Hi, MRC from Arkansas. So introduce yourself. Tell me where you from right now and where you're tuning in from. Yeah, so today's topic I've picked because of the amount of requests that we received from you guys, and that is constipation. So I'm going to talk about that. Hi there from Kentucky, Kim's blogging. I can see there's a few regular people that are coming on, which is awesome. So one of my questions for you is this: what would you guys like me to talk about next week? We still have one more week to go before I'll take a break. I'm going to be taking the whole of December off. I'm going to be going to Portugal and spend some time in Porto and in Lisbon, which is it's one of my favorite European countries, and kind of a good time to go in December because it's still warm, but you don't have the hordes of tourists. And I love the Portuguese food. So yeah, so what topic would you like me to pick for next week? What interests you? What's the biggest pain point that you might be having? If it's something that I already talked about, then I'm gonna point you to the previous episodes and tell you which one is best to follow. But yeah, so just let me know. And I think the easiest thing to do is if you can post down below under comments on this video, just put there next week, Colin, and then give us the topic that you think it would be beneficial. I did talk about things like hot flashes and low estrogen levels. I talked about how to calm yourself down and dealing with anxiety through essential oils, herbs, food, sleep, etc. Tapping, we talked about tapping last week. So I'm curious, how many of you have tried something that you've learned through these sessions here, through the live Q&As? Is there something that you have tried, like maybe, I don't know, Tulsi tea? I'm actually drinking Tulsi tea right now. I'm doing it out of a tea bag from organic India. You see that, Tulsi? That's the Tulsi tea from organic India. That's one of the brands I like to use. It's organic. I oftentimes use loose leaves, but because I ran out and I'm leaving soon, so I'm not gonna buy them. I like fresh leaves, loose leaves, because they tend to be fresher compared to tea bags. So I'm curious, anybody has tried something that has worked for them? That's why I'm doing this constipation topic. My grandson 7 seems to be completely blocked. It was given 8 ounces of magnesium nitrate, didn't even move. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that. Thank you for sharing. Also, keep your questions short because they pop out. Sauerkraut, we love. Sure, Kim's saying, I'm not sure if you want me to talk about sauerkraut, or are you saying that sauerkraut, you just love it? Okay, I hope you haven't lost the audio. Let me just make sure. I love it. Okay, can you guys confirm that you can hear me okay on the transmission? There was a call that just came in. I forgot to turn off my phone, which I can hear. Okay, awesome. So yeah, so why don't we just dive straight into this, and if you wanna just think about it, what do you wanna hear about? Hi there, Sandy. Another regular in our calls. If you want to hear something that is really close to your heart that you really want to know about, then please just post there in case you're just tuning in. Next week, Colin, what would you like me to talk about? So let's talk about constipation. I think it's a really important topic. Obviously, somebody shared just now about grandson not going at all, and it's a real big problem with a lot of kids. With kids, the good thing is that it's kind of an easy fix. With adults, with us as adults, it's a different story altogether. And so you might think of constipation and go like, okay, well, I'm just not going. And if I'm not going, then I might do some extra fiber, like really load up the fiber and go. Great. But the question is, if you really have to do a lot of it all the time, then there could be an issue with it, as in, why are you constipated in the first place? And I'm talking about if you have to take copious amounts of fiber, that is a problem, right? There might be a problem. Oops. It's, oy, oy, oy. Okay, we seem to be back on. So, and then you might think, well, and then if I'm constipated, then I will just take some laxatives, right? You walk into CVS, you see there's aisles and aisles of antacids and laxatives. That kind of gives you an idea what people have a lot of problems with. And some of you might say, well, I don't want to do meds, so I'm going to do herbal and laxatives if I can't go, right? And if you're doing this once in a while because you're traveling or because you ate something you shouldn't have eaten and you're constipated, then that's perfectly fine. But if it's a chronic condition, then there are some underlying causes behind that. That's really what I want to help you uncover today. Because taking a laxative is not a solution. You're just basically masking of what really the problem is, the underlying cause of constipation is. And so as many people say, well, there is this really great herb called senna, S-E-N-N-A, and so I take this laxative every day, I go at night, and then in the morning I go. But then the problem is that if you're having, let's say, problems with lactose, right, or dairy, if you're having low stomach acid, right, if you're having if you're not drinking enough water, right? All of those can be causes for constipation. Then these problems, you're masking that by doing that laxative, but then you're not really addressing the root problem, and it just manifests as constipation, but it can actually cause a lot of other issues further down the road. Like, for example, if you have low stomach acid, which is one of the causes of a constipation, I'm going to talk about it in a second, you might think, well, it's not a big deal. I mean, it's just, I just take a laxative, not a problem, right? Well, low stomach acid can cause a lot of other consequences. Amongst them would be the fact that you do not have enough stomach acid to kill the different pathogens, including things like parasites. So for women who have low stomach acid, we are more prone to getting parasites over and over again. And you take those antiparasitic herbs, and then 6 months later you get another parasite again, right? And I have to say, I'm one of them. I tend to be very easily get parasites, and it's because I have a tendency to have a low stomach acid, something that I need to work on constantly. Second thing is, like, if you have low stomach acid, then you're not absorbing the nutrients. Your body is not excreting the maximum nutrition out of the food that you were eating, and hence that results in depletion of minerals and vitamins, right? So can you see like how getting into the root causes is really, really important, and not just taking even an herbal laxative, because it really is that Ben-8 that we're trying to avoid. So let's talk about like those most obvious ones, and I'm sorry to be talking about that, but I still see that people doing that and are not enough of it, and that's water, as simple as that. I'm not going to talk much about it because I think you guys are a sophisticated audience. It's very simple. You're going to drink at least 2 liters of water every day. So how much water do you know? How do you know if you have a low stomach acid? Bella is asking, great question. I'm going to talk about it in a second when I come to that. So with water, it's very simple. How much water should you be drinking? Take your weight. So let's just say you're 160 pounds, divided by half, that's 80 ounces. That's the amount of water you should be drinking. And if you are from European country and you use liters, then take those 80 ounces divided by 32, right? Because there's 32 ounces to a liter, and then you get a liter conversion. So That's how we know. And I'm sorry to be talking about this, but I see so many people not drinking enough water. I get so many of my clients going, every time I drink water, I'm so energized. Well, hello. It's not the coffee sometimes that can energize you. It's just something as simple as plain water, filtered water, not tap water, please. In America, we it's not only chlorinated, but it's also fluoridated. Fluoride is a huge thyroid inhibitor. Big no-no. Same thing, water filters in the fridge. These things don't work. They don't take out fluoride. Get a water filter with fluoride remover. Chlorine remover is a common one. Fluoride is not an easy one. What about well water? Kibbs is asking. Great question. You need to get it tested. You know, I've worked with people in the past who were convinced that their water was fine. We worked on a lot of issues. They were having heavy metal problems. They were having pesticide issues. And then what turned out was that a neighbor was using pesticides, and that was all seeping into the ground. It was coming into the well water that was shared by 4 neighbors. So it's only they discovered that when they tested it. So it's really important to, if you were like in the middle of nowhere, I still suggest to test it just to see if there's any mineral compounds that might not be beneficial for you. And if you have neighbors and test it every year or so, split the cost with your neighbors and get it tested. Great question. Don't assume just because it's well water, it's good quality water. Will parasites be in the well water? You know, I'm not an expert on this. I don't know. I want to say probably not, but I'm not. That's not my area of expertise. I wouldn't want to give it 100% no. Second cause is water that's boiled before drinking. Bella is asking. Useless. Fluoride doesn't get rid of. You don't get rid of fluoride by boiling the water. By boiling, you're just eliminating certain bacteria, and that's it. And then you don't remove heavy metals. There is now the fluoride, chloride, chlorine, which are hugely important. All the different other pollutants, but also they are finding now things like, you know, all the medications, because so many people on medications that goes through into our water, and then you're drinking that. So a good filtration system will take care of that. All right, let's talk about the second reason why we get constipated, and that's RO. What about RO? I think water filter you mean, right? Reverse osmosis. So my take on reverse osmosis is that it kind of is controversial, right? And reverse osmosis is okay if you might need this if you live next to a river. So by the way, you can get a water report of the area you live. Like if you just Google water report and then enter the name of the city or town you're in and the state, it is by law required that every state publishes the water report, and you can see also the sources of the water. If it's coming from a river that's really polluted, reverse osmosis is the way to go. If you're getting water from clean lakes, like for example in New York, that's not necessary. In California, most places are not necessary. But from what I understand, like if you were somewhere in the States where the river, like the Colorado rivers tend to be polluted, the Mississippi River, then you might want to get a proper RO. And then with the compounds that are being added back to the water, the remineralizing, so like mineralizing, you know what I'm talking about, right? Adding the minerals back into the water is really important. So let me move on because I have another 10 things I want to talk to you about. There's 11 causes. Let me just, no, Brita is not good enough. Hey, you guys, can you do your research on water filtration that removes those things? I'm just going to move on with the questions, or with the points. So the reason why I didn't mention, the reason why constipation also, the secondly is why it's so important, is because it is, from a hormonal balance perspective, is something that I've only found out much later in the game. I started working on thyroid a lot, and intuitively I felt like you gotta have a good bowel movement, right? But I didn't really know exactly how it was affecting our hormones. I only discovered this probably like 3-4 years ago. When I did, I was like, wow, that's amazing. So here's the thing. Did you guys know that when the glands produce the hormones, right, they get delivered to different body cells. Every body cell has receptors for the different hormones. And that's what gives you beautiful hair, energy, clearer mind. You know, your skin is like nice and plump and not dry and sagging, right? All these functions that are controlled by hormones are there, are all, you know, in place when we produce the hormones. Then the hormones get used by the cells, and then they get expelled. They get back into the bloodstream. They get into the liver, and the liver separates them out, right? And then we poop them out. So guess what? Poop them out. Did you hear that? You poop out your metabolized hormones that the body doesn't need anymore. And when you poop them out, that's when the signal gets sent to the glands to start producing fresh hormones. So guess what? When you are not pooping properly, these hormones, instead of being evacuated, they enter the bloodstream all over again. And not to mention the toxins as well. Things like heavy metals, which are inevitably, in the food supply, in the water supply, you can't avoid it. There are some small amounts. But if you're not pooping, all these toxins are entering and re-entering your body. They can be a huge endocrine disruptor. So if you want to have balanced hormones, going to the bathroom regularly is really, really important. And that's part of the reason why I'm glad you guys asked about constipation, because it is such a relevant topic to hormones as well. So what's the second thing to do if you want to have good bowel movement? Fats. Second thing is fats, and you're literally lubricating your body to get rid of all the stuff that basically gets you through, to get the food matter through the intestines, small and large. How much fat? 3 to 5 tablespoons a day is really great. And so whether you're adding that in the form of ghee that you're sauteing your vegetables in, whether it's in the form of salmon that's there, if you can look up how much fat there is in salmon and then figure it out. Whether it's in form of olive oil, it doesn't really matter. It's a combination of all of those. Eating almond nuts are great. Deborah is saying, great. If you can eat almonds, wonderful. A lot of people who eat a lot of almonds 3 months later develop an almond allergy. So for kids, Kim, I don't know. I don't work with kids. I'm sorry. You need to check that online. That's the one thing. Pregnant women and kids are like a different world altogether. And I chose to specialize in women's health, women who are the 35 to 65. And man is another animal altogether, right? So yeah, you need to look at online. But that's for women between 3 to 5 tablespoons a day. We really help. So the third one, which is pretty obvious, is fiber. I already talked about that, right? Many people don't get enough fiber. And for some women, it's as simple as just adding a little bit of fiber to your life, and then that's it, boom. Like somebody said, coconut oil, Janine is saying, absolutely, yes, that's a wonderful one. Thank you for mentioning it. So, fiber, it could be something as simple as doing, 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed, which for those of you who know about seed rotation, is something that's really awesome to do, because not only are you replenishing your estrogen levels into your body, but also you're helping to metabolize the estrogen really well, and you're creating bowel movement. So fiber is really important for hormonal balance. Part of it is that certain fibers bind those metabolized hormones. That includes flaxseed. So flaxseed is wonderful. Doing 2 tablespoons a day is great. For some people, that's not enough, right? So when you realize you need much more fiber than that, then there is most likely your fiber is not having enough fiber is not your problem. There is something else going on, and we're going to talk about that. And I'll tell you something that I discovered at one point. I had a problem with low bile, so let's talk about that in a second. But I was doing a lot of fiber in order to have bowel movement, right? Especially when I travel. A little tip I want to give you. When you travel, I don't know, does anybody here get constipated when you travel? Saileja is asking, she's got estrogen dominance, flaxseed and chia. Okay, flaxseed helps a lot. Chia helps with bowel movement and the fiber, but chia is not estrogenic. So I eat bad food when I travel. Okay, well that explains you constipated when you travel. I tend to do that to get constipated. So what I often do is I travel with whole flaxseed, not ground, but whole, and doing 2 tablespoons at night in a glass of water can be super helpful in getting a bowel movement first thing in the morning. So two tablespoons of full flaxseed, not ground. Ground is great for estrogen. I'm talking about full. You're not gonna digest it. You're gonna see it in your poop, but it's gonna bulk out. So you're gonna drink enough water with it, at least 1.5 cups to 2 cups of water with it, and then boom, you're gonna go like no problem for most people. Let me just have my Tulsi tea. So yeah, so that's about fiber. I think those are the really basic things: water, fat, fiber. I think most people know that, right? So let's talk a little bit more about bad nerves without a constipation for me. I agree. Yeah, thanks for sharing. So that's actually one of the points I want to talk about is the emotional stuff that we have going on. Let's talk about the fourth cause, which is really, really common, really simple to fix, and that's food sensitivities. Some of you have mentioned that when you notice when you drink milk, you're constipated. That's a great observation. Kudos to you because obviously you're in tune with your body. You start seeing these connections, right? I do this, my body responds like that. Awesome. So yes, dairy, gluten are super common reasons why we get constipated. If you're still eating gluten and dairy and you're constipated, I say get off those for 2 weeks. In fact, I would encourage you to do a full elimination diet. I talk about how to do the elimination diet in the free workshop called cookingforbalance.com. So check it out if you want to learn how to do a full elimination diet, cookingforbalance.com. And so yes, so dairy, super problematic for a lot of people. You're gonna get these foods out. It just shows you that, you know, somebody's talking about a formula. That's great. I mean, I'm always curious about what's in the formula, because if it is a form of formula that has got a laxative in it, then again, it goes back to what I said earlier. You're not addressing the root cause of a problem. So yeah, so addressing, cutting out dairy and gluten is gonna be a huge one. I have seen some people having more constipation when they eat a lot of sugar, right? So something you can start observing on your own bowel movements. Let's talk about another one, and that's your microbiome. Did you guys know that just by having the right bacterial profile in your gut, you can have either a really bad bowel movement and be constipated, or have a really good bowel movement? So I know a lot of people who take probiotics and they say, oh my God, ever since I started taking this probiotic, that probiotic, I'm so regular, no problem. Great. And that's another great observation. So I'm a big proponent of probiotics. You've got to have them as part of your life. Here is a problem with probiotics, right? Is that every one of them is first of all, the quality varies. There's different types of probiotics. I'll mention that in a second. And number 3 is that depending on your microflora and what is missing and what's missing and what you have enough of, you might find yourself that one probiotic you buy doesn't do anything for you, and then you get another probiotic and it works like it works wonders, right? So here's so that's what I would. Hey Marcy, I'm going to talk about magnesium in a second. Thanks for mentioning it. So yeah, so when it comes to the microbiome, so there's a couple of bacteria that are really important. The family of lactobacillus, which are very common in most of the probiotics. I always recommend get it from a health store, a refrigerated area, right? From a brand you trust. So bifidobacteria and lactobacillus are the common ones that I think most people know about. And that could be your starting point. If you start taking these, get good brands. Don't buy those things that plain green probiotics, yogurt probiotics. Great. Again, Deborah, it's dairy. I'm not a fan of dairy. If you want to make your own yogurt using these probiotics, using like coconut milk and make coconut milk yogurt, that's awesome. I'm a big proponent of that. If you're really sure you can tolerate dairy, great. I just see too many people having problems with dairy. That's why I do not advocate dairy, even in a yogurt form. So if you get the probiotic, like I mentioned, lactobacillus, bifidobacteria, the typical stuff you get in the over-the-counter stuff in health stores, great, that might work for you right away. But for some people, it just doesn't do anything, right? I still think that you should take it. But then there is possibility of 2 other probiotics I want to mention that might make a humongous difference in your bowel movement. And that's spore-based probiotics, which are totally different from a bacterium or from the lactobacillus or bifidobacteria spores. They're totally different. And that's the only product that I sell because it works so well for so many people, called Megas Probiotics. And I'll post post a link on the below the video. above the video. When you're gonna rewatch it, it's gonna be above the video. There's gonna be a link there. So that could make us probiotics. I've had people say not only have they reversed food sensitivities, that was me too, but they've just started having a regular bowel movement for the first time in years. So that could be another one. And one more thing to look into, and I've had clients who've taken that, is this soil-based bacteria, right? Soil-based probiotic. There is one cool brand called Prescript Assist. I don't sell it. You can just Google it and find it online. You know the whole idea of like dirt is good, eat dirt, right? Don't scrape the carrots off. Let there be a little bit of dirt on the carrots, right? If it's organic or you grow it yourself. Those are all wonderful, old principles of good healthy eating, because we actually want the soil bacteria in us. There's a lot of theories why we have so many digestive issues. One of it is that we are too clean. We've lost a lot of the bacteria, including the soil bacteria. So Prescript Assist is another probiotic. So if you have a combination, try one after the other and see what works. Then you would know. There isn't one thing that's gonna work for you. It all depends on the state of your bacterial flora. And I wish that all these companies had, samples, so they can just give us a sample and you can try that. If it works, then you order the whole thing. Unfortunately, these things are kind of expensive, $30, $40 for a bottle, right? And, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. For those of you who are part of Hormone Thrivers, my close community, in case you wonder, like if you purchased any program in the past from us, whether it's really cheap or really expensive, all of you are part of Hormone Thrivers. It's a closed group with a lot of support and a lot of just support and just community going on it every day. And so what some of the ladies have done before, they have traded it, so just sell it. Like they say, look, I've just used 2 of them, I want to sell it. And so there's a bit of trading sometimes going on, which is perfectly fine. So we talked, let me just do a quick recap in case you're new. We talked about drinking more water, at least 4 tablespoons a day of 3 to 5 tablespoons a day of fats. We talked about fiber. Do you stay on probiotics for a long time or just use it as you need it? Stacy's asking, good question. I would say probiotics is something you need for, especially if it's working for you, if it's helping you feel better. I'll say stay on it for the same way you take, you eat good food, right? Because you want nutrients in your body. The same way we take multivitamins. I would say yes, it's something that should be done on an ongoing basis. Then we talked about food sensitivity, especially gluten and dairy. Then we talked about a microbiome. So we covered 4 so far. Let me move on to another one, which is very common, and that's low stomach acid in a lot of people. I'm wondering if you're okay to share this. If you're not, then that's okay. I'm not here to embarrass anybody. This is a forum for discussion and just making you aware of certain things. There is this perception that stomach acid is a bad thing. If I have acid reflux, if I have GERD, right, then it's because I have too much stomach acid. Far, 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 far from truth. I talked about it last week, I think. Most of us actually do not have sufficient stomach acid. And so guess what? When you have insufficient stomach acid, there is not enough, your stomach acid actually provokes the pancreas to produce enzymes. The enzymes come in to break the food down. Part of the reason why you're not moving those bowels is because the food is not broken down properly. So having good stomach acid can be huge. And I can tell you, I've had clients in the past who would just drink like a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of lemon or lime or apple cider vinegar in a glass of water first thing in the morning, warm water, not cold, before a meal. And that's all they needed to start going to the bathroom again. It's just amazing how simple sometimes these things can be. Of course, it's not as simple for everybody, but that's just one example I'm giving. For a lot of people, that's all they need to do. So somebody asked earlier, how do you know you have a low stomach acid? Few things. The big one is that you see food in your poop. Start looking at your poop. Like if you think it's gross, get over yourself and then look at the bowl. And I'm not asking you to dig anything, just look, because if you see food particles there, that means you haven't broken things down properly. The only exception is things like flax seeds, for example, corn is not gonna, full corn kernels are not gonna get digested, and they're perfectly fine to be seen in the stool. Everything else, like if you have carrots, pieces of leaf that you see there, these soft vegetables should always be completely digested. That's a huge giveaway. Another one is things like having acid reflux. It's a huge giveaway. It's actually low stomach acid for most people. Another one is like you feel like food is always sitting there forever. You know, like you've just eaten and it's just not moving. It's just sitting there, right? A little test you can do is what I call the baking soda test. Are there any bad probiotic for certain conditions? Kim is asking. That's a good question. Yes, they are. For people who are super sensitive, if you're super sensitive to dairy, there is one strain of bacterium, and I forget which one is that right now. It is one of the lactobacilluses that can cause a reaction because it is derived from lactose, and that can cause a reaction for people with super big dairy sensitivity. So that's one. The other one is, so for Crohn's, no. So for Crohn's, I can't think of anything else. But for people who have histamine problems, if you're breaking out with rashes, for example, after drinking a glass of wine, you start having anxiety. So histamine intolerance is things like you start having anxiety, you're having a lot of rashes, skin problems, eczema a lot of times, start having a super big headache, itchiness, right? After having fermented foods, anything fermented, so cheese, sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, wine, right? And then you start, instead of feeling, nice after having a bowl of sauerkraut, you start itching all over. That's a histamine intolerance. So people with histamine intolerance, I see them having really bad reactions to some probiotics, especially the lactobacillus based, but they have great results by taking the megas probiotics I talked about. I'm not sure about the soil bacteria, but I know that the spore-based probiotics can be really turn things around. So that's a great question. So let me move on to low stomach acid. So how do you fix it? You fix it by basically doing, like I mentioned, apple cider vinegar, lemon before meals. Another thing you can do to test low stomach acid is you take a HCl supplement, right, with typically with pepsin in it, which is basically your hydrochloric acid, and that's what your stomach is producing. And Robin is asking, yeah, Robin, so I'm talking about that, is you just buy the regular HCl pills, in a health store, and then take a pill just before a meal, right? Especially if you're having protein. So take one and then have your meal and see how you feel. If you feel nothing, that means that HCl was really needed to start breaking the food down. Next time, before next meal, take two and start going up and up and up. I have had clients who needed as much as 6 to 8 HCl pills before they could feel a burn. So what you're looking for is the sensation of like a burn, discomfort in your stomach. That's when you know you have too much stomach acid. So do a little experiment for yourself and see how many pills do you need in order to feel the burn. And that will really tell you. When I had some digestive issues, I had to take as many as 6 pills before I could feel anything. But over time, your body starts regulating itself, and then you can actually start coming down. You start feeling the burn when you do 6, and then you start coming down. So that's a really great indicator of how much stomach acid do you have and how much more do you need. I'm a bigger proponent of doing like apple cider vinegar before meals rather than the pill itself, just because, the difference is that by drinking the apple cider vinegar, you kind of like tickling your stomach and you're provoking it. You're stimulating it to provoke its own hydrochloric acid, stomach acid, right? Versus taking a pill, you're just giving you something that your body is not producing sufficiently right now. I'm always up for more for stimulation of your own body to do its work and supporting it rather than just giving it, straight up a pill. So choice is yours. If you're traveling, when I'm traveling, I do HCl pills. When I'm at home, I always start the day with apple cider vinegar. So, and by the way, antacids, that's another thing, is medications. So I have got a whole list of medications here. Can cause a lot of constipation. How much vinegar? And by the way, this is apple cider vinegar, not just a white vinegar. It's 2 tablespoons to start off with and a glass of water. Medications that can cause constipation, antacids, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication, some of the blood pressure medications, cold medications like antihistamines, calcium and iron supplements can also give you constipation. So, you know, if you're constipated because of meds, talk to your doctor about changing that, or start adding all these other things I talked about, and hopefully with a higher stomach acid, with more fiber, with more water, with more magnesium, you can offset that and have a regular bowel movement. So the next one I want to talk about is low magnesium. So this is somebody mentioned that. What about, can we have constipation because of being magnesium deficient? Absolutely. That is absolutely possible. And you know, one of the ways of knowing you're magnesium deficient is you crave chocolate, because cacao is very high in magnesium, right? So you're actually not craving so much of the sugar, but you're craving the magnesium. Another one is, you know, having, I mean, everything from having problems, I'm talking about low magnesium here, right? Having problems falling asleep, staying asleep, you know, having a lot of anxiety, having a lot of very unrestful thoughts. You know, magnesium it's got 500 different functions in the body, including helping us produce and convert some of the amino acids to neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin that actually calms you down and makes you feel grounded. So huge things. Yeah, so magnesium, the magnesium form that really gives you a good bowel movement pretty quickly is called magnesium citrate. So the form of magnesium is really important. Citrate will give you a bowel movement right away. And that's good for like an immediate needs, but I'm a bigger fan of replenishing your body with magnesium in a different form, and that's glycinate and magnesium malate are those two good forms. The one magnesium you want to avoid at all costs is magnesium oxide. It's the cheapest form of magnesium that's not very bioavailable, and it doesn't, well, in the best case it doesn't do much for you. In the worst case it's actually quite toxic for some people. And I see a lot of the multi-level companies when they formulate their supplements use magnesium oxide. So one of the things you might want to do is, when you actually, you know, knowledge is power, right? So one of the things you can do is, when you're assessing the quality of the supplements that are being used, look at the back of the label, and if you find magnesium oxide, then you know that that company is just cheap, and they do not have your health you know, as the focus. And so move on to another supplement company that doesn't use that kind of magnesium. So let's talk about next is, so what do you do? Somebody asked, I think, how much, what were the two you recommend again? Malate, M-A-L-A-T-E, and glycinate. G-L-Y-S-I-N-A-T-E, I think, glycinate, magnesium glycinate. Yeah, so how much of it is really, you know, it's, I mean, 500 milligrams is a great starting point. And with magnesium citrate, you might want to titrate up to a point where you're getting a good bowel movement. That kind of gives you an idea of how much you need. So that's that. And let's move on to our seventh one, and that's low bile output. That's a huge one, and I have to tell you, this is something that I had a problem with too when it comes to bile. So bile is this green substance that's produced by the liver, and then it's stored by the gallbladder, right, which is right under in the middle of your tummy. So I'm just showing up here, but it's actually down lower in your stomach area. And right in the middle there, it's hidden under the liver. That's your gallbladder. And the gallbladder is connected then with ducts from the liver, and then from the gallbladder, there's a duct that goes to the intestines in order to, Sandy's asking, hold on, so I'm going to talk about removal gallbladder in a second. And what happens then is so some people, because you are underproducing gallbladder, because you have gallstones on these passages, those tracts that I talked about, the connectors between the gallbladder and the intestine, there could be a lot of gallstones sitting there. Common problem with a lot of people, and then what happens is, then you basically do not have sufficient bile being pumped into the intestines to break the fats down. So that's something that, you know, I completely discovered that by absolute coincidence, that I actually have a problem with bile. Like I don't produce sufficient amount of bile. And so the way you can find out if you have bowel problems is that, you know, in the severe cases of you, when you're having gallbladder problems, like every time you eat something fatty, whether it's nuts or you don't like to eat meat, you don't like to, you know, drink latte because you're just like really put off by fats, intuitively your body rejects it because you're having a problem digesting these fats. So it's actually really quite interesting, right? Like when the body is not able to receive that food, it's gonna be like, no, I don't want it. So what happens is, you know, you don't want to wait to a point where you're really having a problems with gallbladder, right? And you have a lot of gallstones and stuff like that. You can get that checked by having a sonogram done with your functional doctor. Don't wait to a point where you have to have your gallbladder removed. And a lot of doctors are very happy with removing gallbladders. I can post an article about the gallbladder and hormone connection and what are the symptoms of when you have a serious gallbladder problem. Then, like I said, you can't eat any of the fatty foods. You have pain under the your right shoulder, right? Just a lot of abdominal problems and pains. I mean, this is pretty severe. By that time, doctor will tell you you're gonna have your gallbladder removed, and people, you know, they're very happy to just quickly get it removed, and they get a lot of money from insurance company. You want to preserve your gallbladder as much as you can because it's really important for hormonal balance. I'm not gonna talk about that. The article, you can read the article about that. But the interesting thing is that how I found out about that my bowel was actually not, I wasn't getting enough bowel going, is because I went on a ketogenic diet for 2 days. And so for those of you who don't know, ketogenic diet is about 70% of your calories come from fats, only just a little bit of protein and hardly any carbohydrates. It's a crazy diet, but I wanted to try it. It's a diet that a lot of people with, you know, epilepsy have been having great results. I thought I'll do it for a couple of weeks just to see how my body responds to it. People who can tolerate fats have incredible results on the people who do ketogenic diets have incredible results, right? And so they have clearer mind, lots of energy, they sleep way better, they start losing weight, all these amazing results. So I thought, you know, I'm gonna give it a try, right? And I went on it for 3 days and I felt miserable. I couldn't think straight, I couldn't sleep, I was exhausted. All I was doing was just lying on a couch going, I've got so these things to do and I just can't function. It was awful. And that was a trigger point for me going, why am I not digesting these fats really well? Like, why am I feeling so sluggish? And then I started taking bile salts, ox bile salts. So those are salts that are from the ox, from so this is basically your bile from an ox, right? Because they are pretty similar to our own. And ever since I started taking them, I was like, whoa, huge improvement. That was also giving me constipation. That was the main reason why I was having constipation problems, was because the bile is also acts as a laxative. So it's really fascinating to see the connection between, you know, I can't digest fats and I'm also constipated. Bile is the answer. And so going into having sufficient stomach acid can really help with bile production. If you have gallstones, then doing things like a liver flush. Who here has heard of a liver flush? I'm going to be talking more about detoxing in January when I come back. I'm wondering who has heard of or who has done a liver flush before. That's the one that you drink a bunch of, you do a fast and then you do like a cup of olive oil with just a touch of, I've done it, Kim's blogging is saying. So I'm curious, what has it done for you? How did you feel? Yeah, so these, you know, the liver flush is there to basically flush out the gallstones. So typically we have problems with the gallbladder because we tend to accumulate. Stacy's saying she's heard of it, haven't done it, haven't tried it before. So yeah, stay tuned in January. I'm going to talk about detoxing and I'm going to talk about the gallbladder flush as well. It's a pretty awesome experience. You literally feel, you know, let me just get up here a little bit. Yet you literally feel in the liver a feeling of like a flush that just goes down when you drink that oil, and yeah, and you basically poop out all your gallstones, which is kind of cool to see all of that. So let's talk about another 3 reasons I felt not good. Okay, that could be an indication that something is going on with your gallbladder. You're not digesting fats really well. So that's a sign. Because a normal healthy person would just feel a great sense of relief and then going to the bathroom. I have had people who had a lot of problems with gallbladder, who drank that oil and they felt pretty sick, and that gives you a huge indication that you are not producing sufficient bile. So that's something to work on. You don't have to address your bowel issues or gallbladder issues by doing flushes, because obviously that's not going to work. I will post the article about gallbladder hormone connections written by my friend Deborah, who runs a website called the Gallbladder Attack, I think, the gallbladderattack.com. She has plenty of resources what to do. For those of you who asked, what do you do when you don't have a gallbladder? There's actually a lot of things you can do, and I think you should address it proactively. Go to Deborah's website and take a look. She's got a whole section about what to do, what supplements to take, and how to live your life when you don't have a gallbladder. Really important. It's going to help you with your hormones as well. So another last 3 things I want to talk about is, hypothyroidism. Who here has an issue with a low thyroid function or has Hashimoto's disease? I'm curious. Just if you don't mind sharing, just post up there. So a slow thyroid function can often be the cause of constipation, and there's nothing much you can do about it except address your thyroid. And guess what? Kim is saying she's got a hypothyroid. Guess what? The thyroid, most of the thyroid conditions in the country, in developed countries, I should say, also a number of you have thyroid issues. Okay, so it's interesting that most of thyroid conditions are due to Hashimoto's disease, so it's an autoimmune disease, and so really there isn't. You can do all the things I talked about before: water, fiber, probiotics, looking at your gallbladder, getting your stomach acid up higher. So hyperthyroid, Robin is saying hyperthyroid typically tends to make us go more often to the bathroom. I wonder if you have that experience. Dealing with Hashimoto's itself, wow, many of you have thyroid issues. Okay, so Janita is saying, so, addressing that proactively by working on your gut and all of the good stuff is really the starting point. Go to my website called thyroiddietcoach.com, thyroiddietcoach.com. I will post that link as well there. And that's where you can learn more about how do you, what to do to address Hashimoto's disease, what to start off if you haven't done that yet, right? But really, it's an autoimmune disease. You're going to start off with your gut first. By the way, did you guys know that there is an autoimmune documentary that's going on right now called Betrayal? I'll put a link there as well. I think it's going to go on for another couple of days, but there's an option of buying the videos afterwards, DVD, and then getting it shipped to you. For those of you who have Hashimoto's, Crohn's disease, celiac, fibromyalgia, MS, or you have friends who family members who have it, I highly recommend it because it's an awesome documentary. Especially this documentary is wonderful, and that was the whole premise of Tom O'Brien, who's the creator of the series, is to address people who are the non-believers. It's those people who go like, oh, there is no evidence that giving up gluten, it's gonna help me reverse an autoimmune disease. There is no don't talk to me about diet and reversing autoimmune disease. There's no such thing, right? So he's pulled together people who are serious doctors, medical doctors, who basically will give you a different perspective on things. And all of that is obviously backed up with research. And so I think people who are non-believers, if they need that medical guarantee, Andrea is saying she's watching the series. Awesome. So other 2 things I want to mention is, if you have tried all of those things and things still aren't working, so it's not the medications you're taking on, and you're doing all these other things I'm talking about, and you're chronically constipated, I do recommend to seeing a doctor and investigating further. One of the symptoms, of constipation can be colon cancer, and so that's something to look into. Very common. I see it more common in African Americans. Also for people, it's more of a man's disease than the women's. More men have colon cancers, but it's not exclusively, of course, the same thing. You know, majority of women, it's women that mainly get thyroid, but it doesn't mean that there are no men. Obviously, there are men, and I know there's a couple of them here today with us listening to this. So yeah, so just to rule out colon cancer, get a colonoscopy done with a doctor. And the last thing I want to talk about is, you know, somebody mentioned here about whenever you're stressed out, you get constipated. And that's a huge one. Again, it's like if you've gone through the list of things that I mentioned just now, right? You're like, I've done it all, I've covered it all, and I'm still blocked up, right? I can tell you that the last thing I typically would look at, like when I work with someone, is the emotional triggers. You know, is there something from the past that you are holding on to? And you know, there's such a big connection between the mind and the body, right? That how can you tell if you hash? I'm not. I don't understand the question, Robin. So you know, it's just addressing emotional stuff. And I have seen people who resolve stuff from the past trauma. I've worked with a couple of people in the past who are hoarders. And they hoard because they have a fear of letting go of stuff. There's something in the past that happened to them that there was a great sense of loss. And so letting go of stuff is something that comes with incredible difficulty for them. And so when they, you know, and that's the part that really needs to be addressed rather than nutrition itself. And I've seen the same thing with constipation. It doesn't happen often that, you know, you have, it often happens when somebody's a hoarder, also tends to be constipated. If you have a lot of emotional stuff, you hold on to feelings, like you have grudges against people, things that happened 5 years ago, and you see that person, you still have that anger, and you go, and you know, that person doesn't even give a damn that you're angry with them. It's like, it's your problem now, and you're the one who's, you know, just getting all that adrenal fatigue going on. That whole emotion of not letting go of stuff can manifest in form of constipation as well. Not in my area of expertise, but I typically would refer to colleagues who work with emotional stuff if you feel like this is your area. So for those of you who came a little bit late, homeopathy is a terrific modality. Issues like not letting go, absolutely. Laurie is saying, Ellen, thank you for sharing. I have a lot of respect for homeopathy. I have my uncle is a doctor, and he works with a number of modalities. Homeopathy is what got him started in the alternative world, and definitely, yeah, he swears by it. So definitely. So for those of you who came in late, just want to do a quick wrap up. That we talked today about 12 causes of possible constipation: water, fats, fiber, the microbiome, food sensitivities, low stomach acid and taking antacids, low bile output. We talked about MAS that can constipate you, hypothyroidism, deficiency in magnesium, emotional triggers, and colon cancer. So somebody's just asked, I'm gonna just do one quick question before we wrap up. Somebody asked, how do you know you have Hashimoto's? So you've got to run the antibodies test called TPO, thyroperoxidase antibodies, and anti-TGB, anti-thyroglobulin antibodies. If you go to thyroiddietcoach.com, I have a whole, it's called the Thyroid Diet Starter Kit. There's a whole page printout that I recommend for you to print out and take it to your doctor to ask for tests. The good news is that you don't have to, like if your doctor is not supportive and you don't have to fight and negotiate and be all upset about it, that you're being ignored, if he or she doesn't want to check it, then go and go to directlabs.com and you can order the test yourself. I think there's a couple of states you can't do that. Like if you're in New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Connecticut, and if your doctor doesn't want to run the test demand, yeah, Stacy is saying, you can, and you know, I think it's a really good attitude. Thank you for bringing this up, Stacy, because I feel like a lot of times when we go in front of a doctor, we feel really small because here is this doctor, like the semi-god, and here we are, you know, and I really want to urge you to reframe that, because first of all, you are a client. The same way you go to Macy's and you ask an assistant for help, you talk to the manager, you know, you go to a restaurant and there's a manager, and the manager, you know, and they are there to satisfy your needs. And the doctor is the same way. They get paid for it, mind you, you know, whether it's through insurance or out of pocket. You have every right to ask for it. And this is not an unreasonable request to be asking for the antibodies to rule out Hashimoto's disease. So super, super important. If your doctor is saying no, like I said, go to directlabs.com, order that yourself. If you're in New Jersey or this New Jersey, New York state, Massachusetts, I think, Connecticut, then go to directlabs.com slash access, 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 like having access to something. So Chai is saying she's ordering labs from Genova. I don't think you can order labs from Genova directly from their website. You can order from websites like Direct Labs, okay? So I hope you found this helpful. I would like to hear some commitments. What are you guys gonna do to, if you're having constipation issues, or if you're having somebody in your family? Somebody asked about kids before. You know, with kids it's so easy. Probably this little boy is just having a horrendously bad diet, and you know, and having, I don't know what he's eating. I don't know anything about this little boy. But with kids, it's typically when you get them to eat, you know, just regular whole food, they have no problem whatsoever in going. So he might need to have a colonics done. You know, I would recommend that, just to get things going. And then after that, just having a proper diet, get him off all dairy, get him off gluten, is really going to help a lot. So what can you make a commitment to in terms of what are you going to do to help yourself out of the 12 points that I talked about today? What are you guys going to try doing? I'm curious if you want to share this with me. What haven't you done yet? Stacey's saying she's going to drink more water. I get bloated, makes me drink water hard, but I've tried 99% of the time you've mentioned, and walking. Yeah, exercise is another one that helps. I mean, people say that exercise, you know, really helps, and I think ox bile, Andrea is saying, awesome. You know, I mean, I haven't really seen that people who are constipated and only when they exercise they go. If you found somebody like that, I would like to know. But Robin is saying she's gonna try the vinegar, so just making sure it's apple cider vinegar, right? We don't want to do the white vinegar. Adding soil-based probiotics, Kim is saying, awesome, that's great to know. Yeah, so let me get to it, and I will post the links that I have promised you in just a second up above there, above the video, so you can get going with doing the next steps. All right, everybody, wishing you a really wonderful weekend, and I hope you get to do something that's really, really, maybe a little bit of planning for Thanksgiving if you're celebrating. And have you guys seen my Thanksgiving collection of recipes that we put together that are all paleo and gluten-free? And it's just wonderful fruit from wonderful bloggers, and most of them are my friends that we put together. Have you guys seen that? If not, then I'm definitely gonna eating fermented foods. Awesome. Thank you for mentioning. Yes, great. Yeah, that's I talked about probiotics. I forgot about talking about fermented foods, which is so not like me, because I'm always like food first, then on your pills. But yes, today I forgot about that. Great. All right, you guys, have a wonderful one, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye for now.